Welcome to the new Melle Pulse, where we are uniting communities on common ground.
We're telling stories, sharing information, and spotlighting people making an impact in our community.
New Melle is our heart, but the Pulse beats far beyond our city limits. Okay, welcome to another episode of the new Melle Pulse. Today we've got some pretty exciting content. We have our very first guest.
Bill Carrier from Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County.
Yes. We've been talking the last couple episodes about the development, kind of trying to start to lay the groundwork for people in our community who maybe aren't well versed into it, but want to be because they don't really like what they're seeing around them. And just also to start the conversation and keep it going in our community. And so, we're bringing Bill on to help fill in some of those holes about the tall tree development that we've been talking about. And then also what their group has experienced as they've created this grassroots effort to...
Exactly. It's a brilliant organization. Bill is just like a regular person, just like all of us, who in his retirement phase got together with a bunch of other people and decided to create an organization that is a community action organization, and they are on the front lines, to be quite honest. And they've pioneered so much in terms of interjecting themselves in processes that haven't been interjected in quite a long time.
By citizens, right.
Exactly. And so we're really excited to give you a window, just a small window into Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County with one of the representatives, Bill Carrier. There is a number of other people who are involved in the group. We're going to have an awesome conversation with him, and we look forward to sharing what we got.
Yeah, let's get into it. All right, well, here we are with Bill Carrier from I always say this wrong. It's Citizens of Smart Growth.
Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County.
Okay, there we go.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, so...
You just got back from a trip, didn't you?
I did. My wife and I just spent 2 weeks in Botswana. We're very much into wildlife and natural settings, that kind of thing. And so I had a great time and glad to be back trying to...
Seems like you're back to work right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I already attended a county council meeting and had a meeting with one of our newest county council members, Councilwoman York, which went very well. And so, we're back into it.
And it's notable that you're in your retirement age and you're working.
Yeah, so this is not how I planned things. I retired after 35 years as an aerospace engineer. I'm sure you can guess where. And looked forward to doing some flying and doing a lot of photography. And we had built our dream home out here in the rural part of Wentzville down Wilson Road next to the Bromelsack Park. And so it was just focused on all of that until I think it was April of 2023. Those of us who live in the Highway DD corridor, as we like to call it, saw these little signs from St. Charles County saying, "Notice of public meeting." And we were like, what is this all about? And with a little research, found out that on about 350 or so acres that are right in the middle of the Highway DD corridor, a local developer was planning to put 556 homes, quite dense development, and people need to understand the surrounding area there is made up mainly of individual residences of 3 acres or more, or small family farms, a lot of horse farms, small cattle farms, that kind of thing. And so our local residents started to kind of communicate with each other. We attended some of the first meetings that the county held as per their process. And fortunately, our local county councilman, Joe Brazel, was really instrumental in bringing us together and encouraging us to organize. And so that was absolutely key to this. And so 4 of us came together, each with unique skills. I'm an engineer by trade, so I look at things very kind of analytically and process driven. We had a guy with a marketing background, a guy with a finance background, and also a former executive in a local company out in Chesterfield who has all the network and the connections, which are so critical to getting things done.
Yeah.
And so the 4 of us came together and formed Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County. We've been active not only in trying to influence, I'll say, how development is occurring in our specific area down the Highway DD corridor, but since then have been looking at this general trend of, I'll just call it somewhat unrestrained or overdevelopment that's just cascading through southwestern St. Charles County. And now, if people don't know, the next step is northwestern St. Charles County. They have been kind of left alone for a long time, and I think developers are starting to look kind of north of Highway 70 and up and out in that area, in the St. Paul area, kind of.
Oh, that's interesting, because that was when we looked at the last episode, we looked at the 10-year or the future land use map.
Right.
And we noticed, we have our new Melle area is a lot of that.
Yes.
3 acre, I think the color was like a light white, yellowy kind of color. And then the only other chunk left in our district or in our whole county was the St. Paul area. And I made a note of that, and I thought that was interesting. And so of course that would make sense that
right.
That's because we also listened to the economic or the 2024 report, and that's what he was just like, yeah, we're running out of land to develop.
Yes.
And so then that immediately cues me that, like, okay, well, then we know where the next...
And it's interesting statements. When utilities or developers say we're running out of land, I take that with a big grain of salt, because really what that comes down to is a question of how much work do they have to do changing the topography, exactly, bringing in services, that sort of thing, in order to develop the land. And they're used to, in this part of the county, big open tracts of relatively flat land that's easy access with the main transportation arterials or highways. And now that those are starting to disappear, they're kind of bemoaning, oh, we're running out of land. They can develop all sorts of things,
sure,
right? There are companies that specialize in moving dirt and putting in utilities. Back in January at a meeting of the St. Charles County's Master Plan Steering Committee, which, if folks don't know, is comprised primarily of representatives from utilities and developers and real estate firms and that sort of things, small business associations and people that are focused on commerce. Mm-hmm. The executive director of Duckett Creek Sewer District, a guy by the name of Keith Arbuckle, stated, and I quote, "We are going to blow up Highway N with houses," end quote. Which, you start to look at statements like that, and somebody like that who has a role in setting the master plan update that's currently in work by the county, and you start to question, well, whose vision for growth and strategic development in the county are we really getting? Mm-hmm. Is it the residents who should have a voice, clearly, but really don't on that steering committee? And it seems to be driven by what I call the development industry. Mm-hmm. And so it's this is why an organization like Citizens for Smart Growth, I think, is necessary in this day and age to try and be a way of pulling together public opinion and public action to demonstrate to our elected officials that, hey, our voices matter too. We get labeled as anti-growth, we get labeled as elitist, we get labeled all sorts of things. When we're really trying to do is work with the elected officials, work with the development industry, if they would agree to that, which they're often reluctant to do, to try and come up with some balance, right? Are we trying to preserve some of the unique characteristics of the county and the local municipalities while we grow? And then that gets down into sometimes a fundamental question of what is growth, right? And how do you measure it? Is it growth for growth's sake, and you really don't care about the lifestyles or the quality of life that go along with that kind of growth, that remain after the developers, say, hey, we sold the last lot, and we pack up our little sales office, and we're on to the next job, and now we're left with an overburdened infrastructure, whether it be roads, whether it be schools, whether it be emergency services. And when you ask county officials or municipal officials about issues like that, they're always like, don't worry, we'll get around to that, we'll fix that later. And when you're sitting in traffic or your kids are having lunch in the hallways, you have to wonder, okay, when are we going to fix this?
That is like just us in the last 2 episodes that we covered, and listening to Elman speaking directly of his vision, and that was one thing he talked about with MoDOT, and how 10 years ago or whenever they did that, the widening of Double D, which is literally adding a 12-inch shoulder, that was making it safe. But the way he explained it was that it was deadly. People were getting hurt. People were dying. So, we finally worked with MoDOT, and we helped. I think they even helped put in some of the money. And it's but if you're creating this problem of the overdevelopment and MoDOT can't keep up with you, then isn't it your responsibility to address the problem and then fund it yourself? I mean, I would think safety and people dying and
groups could argue, what should lead the other, right? Should development lead the infrastructure? Should infrastructure lead the development? And really, what you're seeking there is parity, right? You want them to kind of edge along
with
together.
Each other. Yeah.
I can see it from a developer's perspective or a utilities perspective. Well, heck, I'm not going to run all this stuff into an area in southwestern St. Charles and hope that development occurs, sure. Right? I get that. So you would hope that there's more kind of integrated planning that occurs there. And again, I see the biggest issue with the situation that we have right now is how do we get the voice of the local residents directly involved and impactfully involved. Go back to the master plan. They do have an online survey that citizens can provide inputs to the master plan. I think it's been closed now. But it was a very interesting survey because all the questions were basically so where do you want all this development to take place? Instead of, do you want development or don't you want development? That question wasn't even asked. It was, how much and where and all this good stuff, And then you could also draw on a map, given your thoughts, what should we preserve and where should we go with the direction of the development. And that seemed great, but I have yet to have anybody from either the county directly or the consultant firm that does this for a living that they hired to facilitate the master plan update tell me how were all those survey inputs and all of those map inputs, how will they actually impact the master plan, right? Is it just a report that goes to the steering committee members who, again, are developers and utilities and real estate firms and so on and so forth? Is it just a report that goes to them and say, hey, this is what the public thinks? And they get to decide whether to include it or not? Right. It's a bit of a stretch to think that the public is really having direct impact, not only on the county's master plan update, but it goes with most of the municipalities have one. O'Fallon has, I looked at it from an engineering perspective and kind of an analytical perspective. O'Fallon has a great comprehensive plan when you read it, well thought out, requires financial analyses of new developments and so on and so forth. Looks great. Don't follow it.
I was just going to say the financial. So let's talk about that a little bit, because with the tall tree development, it originally started with the county, and then the county did put. I'm trying to remember. The county did push back a little bit in the beginning, and then they split. As in, is it the landowner or the developer that split it?
Yeah. So give you the chronology. So back in April, the proposal came from a local developer for the 556 homes on 300 and something acres. And we pulled together public participation in that, the meetings, both the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and the County Council meeting, and were successful in influencing those officials in denying the original proposal. And so per the county's process, if a proposal is denied, if there are no major changes to it, you have to wait a year before you, as an applicant, resubmit. But if there's major changes to it, then you can submit it pretty much right away. Okay. And so about, I want to say 6 to 8 months went by, and we had started to hear through our network that the lead developer had changed, and it was now Lombardo Homes. And we, as Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County, reached out to Lombardo and said, hey, if you're open to it, we'd like to sit down and give you our views. And I will say, to their credit, we sat down with them twice. It was, I think, a polite conversation. They shared with us their strategy that they were now taking the one big development and basically dividing it in two. If folks are familiar where the cricket field is on Highway DD, that's generally the area that they've separated this. And there are two current property owners involved. One has the northern section. There's a family that owns the northern section. Used to be a farm when I've been a resident of St. Charles County since 1985. I moved out to the Highway DD corridor I bought the property in 2010 and moved on to it in 2017. That was still a working farm into the early 2000s. And then the southern section is a kind of a dog training facility called Canine Country. And what Lombardo worked out was, hey, we're gonna split this development into two. And the southern section, which is closer to all you folks that want to preserve the rural nature and everything, we're backing off, and we're not going to develop one little section, and then we're going to put in some 3-acre lots and some acre lots, and ease off a little bit on the density. And we thought that was great, and we came to Lombardo with a set of 7 kind of design features for a development that we thought were important, and I'll just touch on some of those. One was trying to preserve as much of the natural topology as possible. You know, as most people know, developers like to go in and flatten things, and that part of the county is very rolling, and we thought it'd be important to try and preserve that as much as possible. Of course, tree preservation is another. We have minimum lot size that really focused on adhering to the land use on minimum lot size. And there was a series, dark skies compliance, so that we're not dumping a bunch of light into the night sky and things like that. They listened politely. They incorporated a fair amount of it. But the one thing that we could tell was non-negotiable was the number of homes and the density, because that's where they make their money. It's a volume industry, from my estimation. The more you can cram into a given area, the more money you will make. And that goes for the property owners as well. Both of these property owners, the northern and the southern, set pretty high price per acre for their land. I think they saw, it's pretty easy connection to I-64. It is in the middle of a very natural looking area. It borders bush wildlife, for God's sakes. And so they stuck a high price tag on it, and then the developer, of course, to make their requisite profit, has to do certain things, right? And density is a big part of it. Where our negotiations with Lombardo broke down was they refused to tell us what they were planning for the north. And that set off alarm bells with us that they weren't going to try and incorporate the design features that we were talking about and ease off on the density. And so what they did was they split the development. County has the southern portion. We're going to annex the northern portion to the city of O'Fallon that is more supportive of denser developments. They have a pretty good set of land use regulations, but all of these different local governments have ways of working with developers to approve things and waive things and such like that. So what happened, long story short, was when the southern section came up for a county approval, the developer made it clear, unless you approve this, if you don't approve it, we will annex the whole thing to the city of O'Fallon. And so we tried to negotiate with the county council. Again, Joe Brazel was really our strongest supporter, has been since day one. The other county council members, when we tried to show that the annexation was non-compliant with Missouri state statutes, they were like, oh, you don't have a legal case, we don't believe you. We said, well, at least could you hold up approving this until the developer shows what they're planning for the north, so you get the whole picture. And we had council members saying, nope, that's none of our business. If they choose to annex it to O'Fallon, we can't worry about that, even though they're talking about the annexation, which removes that property from the jurisdiction of the county and takes it to O'Fallon, but they didn't want to worry about that. Unfortunately, Councilman Mike Elam just would not listen to our desire to keep the conversation going, keep the negotiations going. He was adamant, nope, we're going to move forward, we're going to take a vote. And that's the night that over 180 people packed the county chambers, expressing their opinion.
That was the one where it was like super hot and people were overheating.
Super hot. There were people out in the entryway.
I actually have a really good picture, which I'll just share real quick. But it was, super packed house. You can see all around. There was people out in the hallway where they could hardly even hear. And I remember Brazel being like, "This is trying to call that out and saying." Right. This isn't. We need to postpone this.
We'd exceeded the limits of the room, right? The capacity of the room, and it's interesting. Back in 2023, when we did the first round, where it got denied, the county, recognizing that the public was very interested in this, moved the planning and zoning and the county council meetings to the family arena, right? Which we had the floor covered with supporters, and people spoke at length, very passionately. And of course, planning and zoning denied it, much to the surprise of the county executive, who asked his staff the next morning, what the hell happened? And then it went to the county council vote, and it was denied there. And so I think some members of St. Charles County government learned, boy, we need to stay the heck out of the family arena and have all these people show up, right? It is interesting, as we were talking before, about what's a magic number for the public to show up and really represent their opposition to something. I'm not sure there is a magic number.
Right.
I think when government officials want to say, it's just a few of you nutcases out there complaining about everything, and only 20 of you or 50 of you show up,
right.
that's not important. Well, unless you provide a way for more of the residents to show up and recognize that, let's face it, people have busy lives.
That's exactly.
Right. And people have kids to take to school or get from school, or, they work second shift and sports and all of that sort of stuff. I once on Facebook, trying to get people to come to a meeting, had a supporter, and again, with all good intent, say, well, what you guys need to do is rent a bus and drive around and pick us all up and take us down to the council chambers and then bring us back home. And I'm like, well, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. We really try to facilitate participation and keep you informed. I think
can only
we're going
do
to
so
have to
much.
draw the line on being a transportation service.
Bill, what did you distill from your experience at that, at that PACT meeting? Like, did that change your perception of the process in any way?
I think throughout this, and it wasn't just that one event. I think the first iteration where they ended up denying it, I think they were so surprised by the organized response that it really shook them. The second time around, several months later, they had a chance to kind of recover. And I think, I'm not sure there was any number of opposition residents that would have kept them from approving it. This crazy threat of annexation, municipal annexation, again, they look at it from two different views that to me are incongruous. The first view is, oh my gosh, municipalities are going to annex everything if we don't stop it, and so to protect the residents of the county, we'll make sure we stop these annexations. And the way they stop the annexations is they agree to what the developer wants, right? And then they said, well, that'll form a block, because when you go to annex into unincorporated county, you have to have what's called contiguity, right? The current city limit of the municipality wanting to annex has to literally physically share a property line with the property they want to annex. And there are some requirements about that, length and percentage and so on and so forth. But the other way they look at the annexation, like I said before, is, okay, they're opposed to the annexation, but you won't go nose to nose with the municipality and say, hey, I'm going to stop you from doing this. What you're proposing is non-compliant with the state statutes. We'll see you in court. The county will not do that. I think they prefer to use the annexation as just a bargaining chip, a way of telling the public, hey, our hands are tied. We got to do this.
Right.
It's the only way out of this problem. And that's not true. We as an organization now, so what happened in the case? They split it. St. Charles County approved the southern development. The developer, Lombardo Homes, took the northern property to the city of O'Fallon. O'Fallon approved the annexation through what they call a voluntary annexation, where the public is basically not involved at all. It just takes an agreement from the landowners and the city. Hey, we want to take this land and annex it into the city. Everybody signs on the dotted line, and they pass a bill, and that's what happened. O'Fallon City Council approved the annexation of about 130, 160 acres on the northern side, And in due course, Lombardo said, hey, we're going to build about 269 homes there, which was kind of the original design for that section of the property. And the city council approved it in short order. And so our organization, Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County, identified 2 plaintiffs. You have to have plaintiffs with legal standing. So basically they have to be property owners that share a property line with the property in question. And we found 2 willing to work with us. And we have sued the city of O'Fallon to void that annexation. I won't get into all the details of our legal argument, but basically our position is it's non-compliant with the state statutes regarding annexation. And so that effort is underway. Recently, the city of O'Fallon attempted to get the judge to dismiss the case based on the idea that our plaintiffs didn't have legal standing and that we weren't interpreting the state statutes properly. Fortunately for us, the judge denied that motion to dismiss, and we are now in the evidentiary phase, and we'll go to trial.
Wow. So now, if they do like give the judgment in benefit of you guys,
right?
Does that what then happens?
So then, most likely, the developer will approach St. Charles County. Again, it will remain and it'll switch back.
Okay.
Right now,
you kind of have to redo that part of the process.
Right now, if you look at the county's map of the area and what's municipal and what's unincorporated, right now it shows it as O'Fallon. Mm-hmm. It would switch back to unincorporated St. Charles County, and then the developer would have to move through planning and zoning and into the county council. It's interesting in that a couple of months ago, Lombardo Homes approached some members of St. Charles County Council going, hey, this thing has dragged on a long time. It's putting the property owners in a tough position. What if we brought it to you? Would you approve it? Which is an interesting turn of events, to say the least.
That is.
And fortunately, I think the response from our supporters on the council was, I don't think so. And so it continues. Their plan for O'Fallon to be the approving authority is still in place, and our lawsuit is still in place. So,
and to kind of go back to one of the things that you said earlier about O'Fallon's general plan, that it seems like they've got a great plan and they're very responsible and having the financial analysis of things. And that was one thing I remember at the O'Fallon Planning and Zoning meeting, was a few of the members speaking up about how fiscally it was not a winner for O'Fallon. They were going to lose money. Right. And yet they still approved it. Do you have any insight on what that whole dynamic is? Because that meeting was very interesting. There was there seems to be a lot of dynamics with the actual council members themselves.
Right. I unfortunately, I don't know the personalities on the O'Fallon City Council as well as I think I know them. We just have a more stronger relationship with the St. Charles County Council. But I will say, I reviewed their financial analysis. I actually took the one that they did for the post-family farms development up on Highway N, and I re-engineered their analysis, communicated with their planning and zoning folks to answer some questions on how they calculated various things. And basically what they do is they say, how much tax revenue will this development bring in versus how much infrastructure cost will it require? And then over 1 year, over up to 40 years, is that a positive thing for the city or is that a negative thing for the city? And granted, if you're planning it out over 40 years and it's slightly negative, okay, things change. But anyway, so what I did is I reverse engineered it, developed it to where when I plugged in the post-family farm characteristics, I got easily within 5%, probably within 3%. I got the same numbers as what the county did. So I redid that then for the northern section of what was Tall Tree, is now called the Villages at Bush Wildlife. And, it's a loser, right? Frankly, as was the post-family farms. They were both negative in terms of cash flow over a year and then over 40 years. And again, even if you said, okay, it's within, a few 100,000 or whatever, but these were significant negatives. And so this goes back to your question of the process. And I think, St. Charles County doesn't even do a financial assessment.
Oh, wow.
At all.
Really?
At all. At least O'Fallon does. And then, much like all the municipalities and the county, when it comes to, well, does it comply with the master plan or not, then they all get real squishy and subjective and go, kind of, sort of, it's okay. It's okay. And planning and zoning staff is really good at talking out of both sides of their mouth. Yeah, it doesn't meet the density, but we all know that, our requirements lag housing trends, so it's okay. It's an interesting way of, in one way, checking the boxes on a process, but in the other way, are you really using no kidding, hard facts, hard criteria to say, sorry guys,
doesn't work.
It doesn't work. If you made a few changes, here's what the changes are, boom, you'd be there. But they prefer, it seems, to have this it's generally compliant, so you're good to go. Well, I have yet in all this process, frankly, to see any of these proposals fail on, nope, it doesn't meet our comprehensive plan or our master plan, so go back and try again. That usually isn't the criteria.
Well, and that's the interesting thing too, kind of going back to all of this of like the citizens having a voice and having a say. And we know, living out here and speaking to our neighbors, and we also know from seeing any of the comments on Facebook, why people have moved out here, and that nobody is happy with the traffic burdens that are happening out here. But also, to the same point, we can't go to every meeting and be on top of them for every meeting. So we kind of expect certain things to, like that. If you have a master plan and everybody's in agreement that, okay, this is how we want the county to develop, then as citizens, we're expecting you to follow that process. Otherwise, then we do have to be part of every meeting, and we can't.
No.
And they don't want us to, because that was the other interesting thing I've picked up on a couple of these, watching some of these council meetings, is there's definitely comments made a lot about, well, luckily nobody's here that is opposing this in the audience. They don't want people there.
It's
at least that's the vibe I'm getting from some of these statements. I don't want to make the general.
No, I think a lot of our officials do want to get public opinion. The other mechanism that's in place, I think, on all of these councils is whose district is the development proposed for. And so if it's proposed for a certain council member's district or ward, then I think there's a lot of deference a lot of times to that individual council member, and say, well, are you are you approving it or are you against it? Because they know what goes around comes around, right? At least that's personal opinion, my observation. I am sure that there are some that stick to the facts and use their heads and their hearts to make what they think is the right decision. But again, you're right. There's limited, I think, opportunity for the public. What emails are great, if folks are looking for a way to participate, sending an email to the Planning and Zoning Commission or the city or county council. Emails are great. Phone calls are a lot better.
Okay.
I think they're just more effective because you have a dialogue, right? Most of the folks probably listening to this have an inbox that just goes chunk, and our elected officials are no different, and so I sympathize with them on that manner. Personal conversations, if you can meet informally or at an event or something, and that's why coming down to the council meetings or the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings and speaking your views, I think is a very important thing for people to do. Our organization, we're trying to look broader. I know we've been tagged by a couple of council members, particularly in O'Fallon, as a one-issue organization that's all about highway DD and so on and so forth. And we've tried to broaden, but again, we're kind of a grassroots community action organization. Guys are doing this in their free time. We've been fairly successful getting donations from the local community. We've raised well over $25,000. Now, pretty much all of that passes directly to us and goes to lawyers, which, okay, that's what we're trying to do in order to take kind of direct action on some of these activities. We are starting to get a little bit more politically involved. We don't want to be a political action committee, but when you've tried your best to communicate with a particular elected official as to what your and their constituents want or are opposed against, and they have a track record of kind of ignoring you, then you have to say, well, do we have the right elected official? And so in this last municipal election, we formally endorsed several candidates. We made gains, particularly in the O'Fallon City Council and other municipalities. About 4 of our candidates ended up winning, which we thought was great.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be much more involved in the upcoming county executive election. I think there's...
Yeah, because that's an interesting one that seems to be shaping up.
Yeah, it is. And we're not yet ready to endorse anybody. We're really evaluating. We need to sit down with all the candidates. We still got some time there. We have track record of experience with at least one. So we need to kind of understand where the others are coming from. Because the county executive role is a very critical and very impactful role. We've seen with County Executive Ellman and his vision to want to develop the county to the utmost. That flows down into the entire administration of the county government. Impact on planning and zoning staff, impact on the county councilor, the county attorney, right? The county executive can kind of set the strategy and set the goals and objectives, and they all salute and go, yes, sir, we're going to follow through on that. And so they enable, a lot of that vision. And so, again, I just want to emphasize, we are not anti-growth, we are not anti-development, we are not elitists trying to keep people out. But we do think that as you move about the county, there needs to be consideration for existing residents and a way of transitioning between the rural parts of the county and the more suburban parts of the county. And it shouldn't be abrupt where on one side of the street you have a small farm, and the other side of the street, you've got 5-story apartment buildings, right? It's just, let's try to figure out transition. And then transition is in the eye of the beholder, because I've talked to a lot of officials who go, oh yeah, that's a real smooth transition there. And you're like, well, I don't know about that. But I will say, I think in our conversations with county residents, I think a lot of the rural residents of St. Charles County feel completely abandoned by County Executive Ellman's administration.
All right. Well, let's pause it there. So far we've covered a lot with Bill. This is obviously going to be a lot of conversation around this. There's a lot to cover. So we're going to break this up into 2 episodes. So make sure you join in next week as we finish this conversation with Bill and about our development in our area and what as citizens can we do to make sure our voices are heard.
Bill mentioned a lot of resources in this episode, and we also want to provide some more things that he didn't mention. So if you go down in the description, you'll see a lot of the different links there, as well as a direct link to go and support Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County. Thank you guys for always tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, and last thing, sorry, make sure if you do have any feedback or comments or things you want to submit to us, please visit our website, oh my God.
Dude, I told you.
I said it right one time earlier today. Did you hear that?
I did. You did say it right. But
okay, I'm going to do it.
We said last episode. You just said you're going to do it.
You did.
NewMellePulse.news.
Yes, and also we are here at the Freedoms Community Center where we are building community here. So if you're looking for a place to rent for an event, if you're looking for a office space to rent, we have some subscription-based options. Come see our farmers market that we're doing every Saturday out in our parking lot. We have a gardening course that's getting ready to start. So if you haven't signed up, it's probably too late at this point by the time you watch this, but we plan on bringing more content like that to our community. So if there's something you're looking for, again, visit our site, submit that feedback, let us know. We'd be happy to have you here in this space and help us build community.
We're the faces and voices behind the New Melle Farmers Market, the Country Market, the New Melle Food Co-op, Freed's Community Center, the NewMellePulse.news, us, and 3 other amazing board members, and a whole lot of community input and volunteer hours. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Bye.